ready.
Welcome to another episode of Buff in the Rough. Today we'll hear from Chris Ingram about reintroducing the American Field Sportsman's Journal, hunting possums with Jagdterriers, turkey hunting with dogs, and a lot more. Help me welcome Chris to the program. Well, hey Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well, Sam. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing really well, better than I deserve. I'm so excited to have you on and to learn a little bit more about you and what you've been up to, but also to kind of introduce you to some folks that are listening. So, for folks maybe that don't know who Chris Ingram is, could you tell us a little bit maybe about yourself and how you got involved in this whole world of dog-related sports?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally I'm from the Milwaukee area of Wisconsin, and had an exposure to the outdoors a little bit through Boy Scouts, and my family did some camping, hiking, fishing, all that side of things. And I took to deer hunting. Of course, that's big in that part of the country. And unfortunately, that first year was when they found chronic wasting disease. So it was pretty short-lived, and kind of from there went into high school and college and really took a break from the outdoors. It wasn't until I moved to Vermont about 15 years or so ago now, sort of as a young adult, when I got reintroduced to the outdoors. And, just a great place out here to do all things from hunting and fishing, everything else. But kind of started with the waterfowl game, and thought I was going to get back into deer hunting, but this place I was kind of scouting had a bunch of wood ducks, and so that kind of turned me on to that. Got into the retriever game. Fast forward a couple years from that, got into the upland side of things. So here, mostly grouse and woodcock hunting, little pheasant hunting on the preserve. And a few years after that, got into the hound sports. So there's some friends that run beagles for rabbits and hare, and a lot of bear hunters, a few coon hunters. And so I just, kind of personally and professionally have sort of followed that path, coming full circle with all of the different types of hunting dogs. And I can't claim to have owned a hunting dog myself yet, but maybe a good decision that way, that I'm not tied to anything in my kennel and can kind of go around with everybody else. But just sort of chasing different passions and seeing what's around me, and kind of going through the ranks that way. Yeah.
Well, Chris, that's super interesting. Can you describe what it's like landscape-wise in Vermont for folks maybe that aren't as familiar with that part of the country? What does it look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, right now we call it stick season, so it's just past the peak foliage, and of course it's absolutely beautiful. It's just stunning here in the fall time of year, and there's really not a bad time of year to visit Vermont, but I live in the Middlebury area, which is an hour south of Burlington. Kind of 15 minutes to the west, I'm on Lake Champlain, and then over the bridge to New York State, the Adirondack Mountains there, and then 15 minutes to the east to where I live, I'm up into the Green Mountains. So where I live here is very sort of agriculture focused, lots of dairy farms, apple orchards, got some hemp and cannabis farms now, but very much a mix of that kind of rural life. And then it's not very populated out here, pretty rural. You got some more mountainous regions, but here in the Champlain Valley, it's just a great mixed landscape of agriculture, hardwood stands, some smaller creeks. We got the big lake here, so an exceptional place to be a hunter and an angler. Yeah.
That sounds pretty perfect. What are the winters like? Are they pretty tough?
It's funny because I've been here about 15 years now, and I think it's become a little bit better. The lake doesn't quite freeze over as much, and we still get good amounts of snow, and a couple dumpings. But I would say for a good couple weeks, usually late January, early February, it'll drop 20 below for a good stretch, and doesn't get too warm. So kind of hunker down for those and just sort of ride it out. But you know what I mean? It's nice because, well, as we've talked before, I like to chase beagles and bunnies, and that's what you do in the wintertime to get through. So as long as you can find something to do and make it work, yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about your role at the United Kennel Club, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about the history, because we're going to talk a little bit about the publication side of the business in a minute. But could you tell us a little about the history of this kind of newish acquisition of a retriever registry, and maybe how that's impacting UKC as well?
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. Thanks. So there's a storied, iconic legacy brand called the American Field, and originally started in 1874 with America's first ever pointing dog field trial. It was outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and once you have an event, you got to report on it. And so they sort of started this publication, and for many, many years, it was actually a weekly newspaper. And again, started with these pointing dog field trials, and they did sort of encompass other aspects of the outdoor lifestyle, different hunting and fishing stories. They used to actually report on trap and pistol events, all sorts of things for the outdoor sportsman. And then with that, kind of covering the pointing dogs, they started what's called the Field Dog Stud Book. And so they really encompassed a lot of different breeds. I think there was even retrievers, coonhounds, maybe some beagles, but that sort of registry went on a long time. And then let's see, so towards the pandemic, of course, when the whole world shut down, the American Field went out of print production. They went to digital only. And then in 2021 of September of that year, UKC had purchased the American Field. And so with that was their pointing dog field trials. There was the publication, the publishing company, and that Field Dog Stud Book. So for the last 3 years, UKC has been integrating all of those different aspects into our ecosystem. So we have now, with our registry and the FDSB, this sort of dual privilege registry. So folks can compete with their dogs on either side, and able to continue those pedigrees. What used to be a weekly publication, we've converted that into what we now call the UKC Field. That's a monthly newsletter that's available digital and print for those customers engaged in the pointing dog sports. And then with this sort of legacy publication left over, we have rebranded it. We're reintroducing it. We're calling it American Field Sportsman's Journal. And it's going to be a quarterly editorial, really focused on all types of hunting dogs. So not just bird dogs, but retrievers, hounds, squirrel dogs, beagles, terriers, working dogs, all sorts of things there. And really excited to try to, sort of bring all those different user groups together in one single publication. So excited to see what we can do with that. But, I'll add one thing to that, Sam, is that not only are we focused on hunting dogs, but also the sportsman's lifestyle. So kind of going back to some of the original roots of this brand, we've got departments on hunting dog health, wild game cooking, conservation, guns and shooting, all those sorts of topics that no matter what kind of dog or what kind of game you chase, we've got the content that you're looking for. So, yeah.
I love it. I can't wait to read it. And so, Chris, help me. What's your role? So, within this?
Yeah, very well. So, my official title with United Kennel Club is the Marketing Promotions Manager. So, on a higher level, I'm responsible for all sorts of marketing and promotional campaigns, from social media to our Hunting Ops podcast, different events and different things happening at the business. And with this project, being a high priority for the company, it's been one of my main areas of focus. So, within that, I'm blessed to, sort of be the editor. So handling the, content direction and working with contributors, folks like yourself, Sam, the photographers, and, sort of leading the social media and marketing efforts on that. Yeah.
You may have noticed, my next question is going to be a little different, but you
Mm-hmm.
may have noticed we just finished up a presidential election. And I promise I'm not going to ask you a question about the election. However, one of the kind of the postmortems that I hear about how they each party reached the voters was very different in their approaches. And I can't help but think that you mentioned digital as something that's out there now that maybe wasn't out there 15, 20 years ago as an alternative for folks. Could you talk us through maybe what it's going to look like in the future for folks that want to consume this information? Is it going to be totally digital? Do you think there'll always be a print element? Do you think that this new podcast thing, I say new, relatively new podcast that are out there that pop up all over the place, where are people going to be able to get information?
Yeah, no, I love that question, and I'm excited to respond and to chat with you about that. I think you and I sort of contributing and working in print media, sometimes people will say print is dead, or, it's cost prohibitive, and we've watched publications, shrink or die off or things like that. So, I think this is just an incredible time for being a consumer, being a contributor, print and content overall. And my opinion, and based on some observations that I'm seeing, I think there's a resurgence of sorts. There's sort of what is left over in print is, usually higher quality, it's higher content, really focused on stories and engaging the readership. But I think with that being said, as a brand, as an entity that exists, you have to be across all of these different mediums. And so social, digital, email, print, podcasts, those sorts of things, I think, to stay relevant. And say, for example, within the hunting dog community, we have participants at all levels, from teenagers on Snapchats and, TikToks, all the way to, some of those, older members of the community that maybe still fill out the mail-in tear-out cards just to make their subscription. So, it's my goal with UKC and with the Journal here to meet those folks where they are. And, however you want to communicate and to consume this content, we'll be able to provide it and those different platforms. And, I won't give up too many secrets tonight, but, certainly encourage the readers to stay tuned to everything that we're doing across all those different channels. We're definitely, like I said, have all those inputs going. Yeah.
Well, I love the comment, you're going to meet people where they are. I can remember in the not too distant past, e-readers coming out, the Kindle, those things, and you could read your books on a tablet. And I've got to tell you, I'm old school. I just love a book. I'm one of the old guys that loves to actually have a book and turn pages. So I don't know. I just don't know that I'll change my opinion on that. Maybe I will at some point. But I've got to tell you, I was at like a Christmas dinner a couple years ago, and one of my younger cousins was just talking about podcasts, and hey, Sam, do you ever listen to podcasts? And I went, not really. And so they looked at me like I was crazy, and maybe I am. But the long and short of it is, it made me interested in and now I listen to podcasts all the time. It's one of the places I go to for all kinds of information, not just hunting, but news and just general information and just things that I'm interested in. So I'm really happy to hear that you kind of got you're casting a big net, at least here in the beginning. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, even sort of the same type of content, like for me, if I want to learn how to do something, I'm usually going to YouTube, or I'm going to Google. Sure, I call my father or, find a local friend or something like that. But it's kind of neat to have all these different ways to get information, to consume content. And, I think that's going to be one of the strong suits of our brand, is to offer different ways, and we hope that you enjoy having that journal in your hand to read and to keep on your shelf. But, who knows? We might have some other ways to get the information and to get stories and things like that. So.
One of the things that you mentioned that I think is very interesting, and I hope it's a hook for folks that may be interested in checking out the journal, is that you are going to open it up to all kinds of different topics. And like for me, I love rabbit hunting. I love coon hunting. Those are probably my two go-tos. But I also love to hear about other things. I love hearing about bird hunters. I love hearing about the bird dogs, the retrievers. I love hearing about squirrel dogs. I don't get to squirrel hunt that often with folks that have dogs, but I love reading about that. And then you mentioned maybe recipes. I'm always looking for a good recipe. Who's not, right? I mean, if you're in this sport, I mean, you love to have some good fresh wild game from time to time. So I'm really really excited about that. Now, having said that, I know you're kind of a renaissance man when it comes to being out there in this sporting world with dogs. Can you share some stories about some of the most interesting kinds of dogs that you've hunted with, or maybe just a really cool experience that you had with things that maybe aren't necessarily what folks think of when they think of sporting dogs? Like, I know, for example, I'm not trying to bait you into this, but I'd love to personally hear you talk more about terriers and kind of that world and what you've seen there. And maybe, I swear I read somewhere that you went turkey hunting with a dog. I mean, is that even possible?
Yeah. No, I'd love to talk about that, and I'm more than happy to. I'm coming fresh off of those hunts about a week or so ago, and I had to travel to the Midwest for work, and of course, I've made a lot of contacts in my work here, and so got a couple placeholders and different things to look forward to doing. So I was able to check a couple boxes this last week or so, and I met up with a friend. Nick Fox is his name. He's in northern Indiana, and he keeps a kennel of terriers, and he's got a couple of Jagdterriers. So if folks aren't familiar with that, think of an assault Yorkie is sort of the name that he uses, but they're a breed of German descent that are really were sort of bred to take on all sorts of game, from baying hogs and treeing bears to squirrels to going underground for varmints. And so, and sort of to add to the fullness of this pack, he had what's called a lurcher. And best I understand, a lurcher is a type of dog, largely like a sort of a sight hound crossed with something like a bull terrier or something like that. Mm-hmm. And what we did is we went into some groundhog hole sets, and let the dogs kind of sniff around. And when they find a hole that they think something's down in there, you just watch them disappear. And I tell you, I've been with a lot of different types of hunting dogs, and watching a retriever go into icy water, mm-hmm. Watching a bird dog go up over a ridge and out of sight. But man, nothing compares to this feeling of when you watch a dog go into a hole underground and go out of sight. And I looked at Nick, and he was calm and collected, and we use tracking collars of different sorts mm-hmm. when the dogs go underground. It's almost I won't geek out too much, but it's electromagnetic locating, like they used to find the underground wires. GPS doesn't work, so it's a completely different thing. But it's really neat to hear them go down, and they start baying at this varmint, and you're hearing the sound echo through, and you've got this lurcher on top that's moving from hole to hole, kind of sniffing and listening, because what they do is if that animal, bails out and goes above ground, that dog will take chase and will dispatch that animal. And then it's just kind of a matter of, trying to listen and hear the story of what's going on. And, you get to a point where this varmint is bait up, and you got to go kind of dig down to get your dog and to, sort of move this hunt to the next level. But it was very, very different. It's, you're just kind of standing there, but you're listening and you're watching, and, you're taken sensory input in different ways, but definitely a different type of hunt. And it was very enjoyable to see the two different dogs work and how the hunter is, sort of coaching his dogs and just sort of coordinating this whole effort. And the second day we went out, we met up with some of his friends who have Jack Russell Terriers. Mm-hmm. And, to sort of see them go down, and they're more sort of like will bay up, where these Yags will engage with the animals and sometimes dispatch them underground. But to see, the white dogs go down, and then you put the Yags in, and you've got these lurchers, and this whole, it's like coordinated chaos where, just a little crazy, and kind of has this like roller coaster of peaks and valleys, and then, just the incredible teamwork from the hunters. Everybody knows what's going on, has a job to do, moving gear, using tools, moving the truck, kind of staging different things. And man, it was just really exciting to see and to kind of be a part of that. And so we're working on a story for that. We're, going to put that in the journal and, really show again what these dogs were bred to do, and just showing, just true humble people out there just working with their dogs. That's what we're all about.
That is the craziest thing I've ever heard of. I would be so worried about my dog being under the ground, like they couldn't get out. So you have to physically dig them out sometimes.
Yes, sir. That's true. I mean, a lot of times, if anybody's seen these, ground hole sets, and it's not always a groundhog, you hope it is, but sometimes it could be a possum. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of raccoons, maybe a skunk, something like that. And that's the real issue is when a dog gets skunked down below, as I understand, that essence can sort of choke out the air for them. So, you got to be ready to dig a hole quick and get your dog out. But, a lot of times, they'll work through that tunnel system and go down one hole and pop out another, or move these animals around. And it's kind of cool, too, because, again, the end goal is, this isn't pleasure hunting. This is damage control. I want to be very clear about that. Mm-hmm. We get... I say these terrier owners get access to hunt farms and work with different landowners who are experiencing significant crop damage often from these varmints working over their crops. So it has a intended purpose for it, but the end goal is typically to dispatch a troublesome animal. Sometimes when they get kind of bound up, or again they're bayed up, that allows the hunters the chance to dig down and to kind of grab their dog. And, again, sometimes that lurcher will come in, or sometimes there's some other means of hunters to dispatch that animal. Yeah.
Well, how far down under the ground typically do they go?
Yeah, I mean, I just got out for a few days on the hunts, and it certainly depends on soil types too. I think we saw maybe close to 6 feet, something like that. Wow. You've got your sort of locating device, and it's, got a little bit of a range to it. But, I think these tunnel systems can be pretty intricate. You need to be surprised, how quickly a group of hunters can dig a hole too. It, sometimes the clay is tough, but sand and loamy soils are a bit easier.
Wow. That sounds so cool. I can't wait to read more about that. Well, tell us about the turkey hunting. But I've got to hear this.
Yeah, it was quite a week, and then I was, riding high off of that, and then the following day I had linked up with another friend of mine from the Midwest, and we went on a turkey dog hunt. And I want to be clear too. I think there's a few things going around right now about some of these bird dog owners, versatile dog owners that are turkey hunting with their dogs, and I'm not a purist, as long as it's legal and ethical, everybody's able to do whatever they want. But I was interested in the historical context. Now, a little tie back to the American field. I've read some things going back to the 1800s that talk about what's called a dropper. And I'm not an expert here, but the best I can tell, that a dropper was a cross between an English setter and an English pointer, or some sort of pointer and setter crosses. And they were using these dogs to compete in these pointing dog trials years ago. Now, somewhere back in Appalachia, I believe in the Virginia area, at some time in history, I sort of laugh because I think what happened was some of these droppers would open on birds or open on tracks, and you know what I mean by barking. Mm-hmm. And they weren't no good for a field trial. So I think somebody just said, hey, this would make a really good turkey hunting dog. And so these droppers are now sort of associated with turkey dogs. And essentially what they do is, I mean, the hunting is incredible because you're working with what looks like an elegant, graceful, pointer setter sort of bird dog. Mm-hmm. And they work through the woods as such. And they range out, a couple hundred yards, and they make their circles and they check back in just like any old good bird dog. But their whole objective is to locate a flock of turkeys. And for any of the listeners that know about fall turkey hunting, it's all about busting flocks, sitting up on that break site, and, working birds back in with the mouth call and bringing them to the gun. Mm-hmm. So this dog goes out and is working the cover. And we had one dog on this hunt, and when he was about 300 yards out and he found a flock of turkeys, he went ballistic. I mean, he just sounded like a pack of hounds. I mean, I've been under trees with 6 bear dogs, and they failed to make the volume of noise this turkey dog did at 300 yards. And the coolest part is I was with my buddy, Matt, from Ohio, and he's looking on his handheld, and you can see the dog, chasing a bird off this way, turning back, chasing another bird off this way, turning down, pushing the bird off this way. And so you could sort of see he is clearing every bird out of that site, and that's his goal, is to scatter the flock, push them away, get them to fly, get them to run, whatever he did. It was about maybe 2 or 3 minutes just going ballistic. I mean, and it was the coolest thing to hear. And now your blood is going, right? Your blood is pumping, and we're starting to make our way up to the break site. And I think one bird sort of flew over our head, and we moved another 1 or 2 out of the trees. And it's like, okay, we are here. This is it. And you sort of, start to set up like you would for any turkey hunt. You put your blind up, make your cover, kind of get hidden up. Mm-hmm. And then the dog just sits on his owner's lap and gets covered with burlap. And I tell you, I've been with a lot of dogs. I've seen a lot of talent, a lot of impressive performance. But to me, to have that dog just going absolutely ballistic, breaking birds, to sitting still, motionless, quiet, without a peep for an hour, to me is beyond impressiveness. Wow. To have an animal that just knows and is genetically predisposed to hunt like this. And so we waited a solid hour until we started to hear some peeps and the key runs and the assembly call. My buddy Matt was working his diaphragm call, and we were starting to get some responses. We had a bird up front coming in. It was kind of like hanging up or something like that. And next thing we know, off the right side where I was sitting, this boss hen just started yelping and scratching, and she was coming in hot. Mm-hmm. And she got within about 40 yards or so, and I'm watching her. She's getting really cautious, picking her head up, looked over at Matt, and he took his shot, and we got a hen out of that flock. And man, it was just awesome just to see how that dog, worked, and how he just had all these different things to do. And I mean, very impressive to see, again, this unique line of droppers, turkey dogs specifically. It was, it was one of the coolest hunts I've been on. And again, it's like having a bird dog almost mixed with a feist, just that intensity for treeing or barking, it sounded like. And yeah, I'm getting fired up about it already. It was just a heck of an experience. Yeah,
I've just never heard of turkey hunting with a dog. That sounds like a blast. I mean, that sounds like it'd be addictive.
Yeah, it really is, and I think part of it, is that it's not legal in all states.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Midwest, there's certainly in the fall the ability to use dogs. I really don't think there's many states, maybe one, where you can use it in the spring season. But again, we're just using this dog to help us, with that fall turkey hunting strategy of breaking up flocks and reassembling them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can certainly use it, do it with any sort of versatile dog, or, maybe like those Boykin Spaniels, I think have some sort of history with that. But to sort of experience this with, what we recognize, and again, here in America, as a true turkey hunting dog, and these droppers was just an awesome experience. Yeah.
That sounds so cool. I'm going to switch gears on you just a little bit, because
Sure.
we are in the middle of small game hunting season, kind of scattered all over the country now. And in your line of work, you certainly are very savvy when it comes to promoting and sharing your hunts. What advice would you give to people? Because we live in a world when there's certainly anti-hunting groups that would pounce on maybe some distasteful posts that people may have. What's some advice you would give people about posting successful hunts with their images, or just in the information they share out there? Do you have anything you'd cover? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. And I think that's a really good question. Thanks for posing it to me. And one of the things that has really inspired or motivated me as a photographer is to think that not to say that a successful hunt doesn't always mean a dead animal or a limit, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I think, the ability to communicate, different experiences, different components, of the hunt or of that experience, that's what we can really share here to inspire others, or to help share our story. It might be, a hunt with a family member that was significant, perhaps a dog or some setting that you're in. There's so many different elements and facets of these stories to tell. I always like to try to educate, if it's talking about some sort of obscure form of hunting, or, if it's about the food, preparation element of it, or something like that. Or I try to kind of year after year almost give myself, different metrics or different challenges, if you will, so that it doesn't get stale, or, I just continue to find enjoyment of it. But, I would say, and again, I'm not trying to preach or tell anybody that,
Sure,
what is right or what is wrong, but maybe to just try to think outside the box a little bit. And, what's one thing that you'd want to show somebody who didn't know about this? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be all grip and grin and things like that, but, to try to just make an impact on somebody with what you're doing out there.
Mm-hmm. Very good advice. Now, I know you're super excited about American Field. I know that's got to be your baby right now. So that's today, right now, is what you're really excited about. What are you excited about, or what do you think you'll be excited about 3-5 years from now? What do you see coming?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I said, I'm really focused on relaunch right now. But what I'm excited about is, I feel very blessed to be in this position and to have the capacity, to do this for my job. But what I'm really excited about is to sort of set the stage and then allow our customers, our readership, our audience to really help fulfill the pages of, say, our story. And, we're going to be a little different, where we're focused more on sort of contributions, from ordinary hunters out there. Mm-hmm. And not just articles, but it might be, poetry or fiction pieces, humor, mm-hmm. Different forms of art, and everything that sort of captures our life with hunting dogs. And so I'm interested to see in 3 to 5 years from now, what our brand becomes. Mm-hmm. And we set the stage now, and I'll kind of try to help coach it along, but I want to very much make it, this sort of brand, by the people, for the people. So I'm really excited to see who comes out of the woodwork, who sort of raises their hand, who jumps in, and who's participating in a few years from now.
Very good. Now, I have a couple more questions for you. This one, I just think you're in a very unique position to answer. And I think that's just a little bit about the background of how I want to ask this question. And is I think most people they're kind of in their own world. For me, it's beagles and coon dogs. That's kind of what I'm into, and I don't really pay as much attention to some of the other breeds. I think they're fascinating, but I have no idea, are they on the rise, or are they on the decline? But where you sit and working for a very powerful kennel club, very old, well established, well respected kennel club, you get to see the rise and fall of many trends. So, what are some of the trends in popularity for the different types of hunting dogs? I mean, are some of them on the rise, or some of them on the decline, or what do you think about that?
Yeah. Another good question, and I certainly will not claim to be an expert. Maybe some of my own observations, and mind you, and listeners, I've been employed with UKC for just about 6 months here, and they've been following for even many years beyond that. I think between you and I, Sam, the coon hunting seems to maybe be on the decline, or more so sort of evolving and changing a little bit. And I maybe not be as tapped into that world, but, we'll certainly make a plug here for, you have a story with us in the journal in our very first spring issue, kind of on the State of the Union of coon hunting. So, maybe we'll kind of leave it there and have everybody sort of get some more clarity in that. But I know for us, a couple things here. So we, in our hunting ops, have the Elite Shed Dog series, and that's a newer sport. It's the newest in our portfolio. Of course, we've sort of seen the interest and awareness in that. And I think just with the sheer number of whitetail hunters and deer hunters and folks with family pets, that shed hunting is not unique to any one breed or type of dog. I heard today about somebody that shed hunts with their poodles. We see all those different dogs represented in our sports too. So, what's great about shed dogs is, not necessarily the killing of an animal. So if that's not, for everybody, or perhaps getting a family or, a spouse or somebody else involved, what a great entry point. Along that line too, another sort of story that I'm working on, another thing that I've been exposed to is this idea of leashed tracking dogs, or like big game recovery dogs. It seems to be taking on more popularity and more awareness. I see more states are allowing the use of these, again, leashed tracking dogs for the recovery of deer, bear, moose, big game animals. Once again, something that you can be out in the woods, you can experience the sort of thrill of the hunt without maybe having to pull the trigger. And I think, both of these sheds and tracking dogs, if you already have a dog at home, or a kennel full, it's more than likely that you can sort of cross-train or introduce your dog to some of this, sort of, add it to its resume. So I think just the growing awareness and the accessibility of shed hunting and tracking dogs, those are definitely at the forefront from what I'm seeing. But, I think overall otherwise, sometimes it's sort of regional or, has a little bit of trends, but I think bird dogs will sort of be high on the list, and lots of retriever owners. You got your hounds and beaglers out there too, but yeah.
Very good. Well, I want to wrap up maybe with this question, and it's just a general question and maybe an opinion question, but what advice would you give to someone that maybe has a dog, and I'm, regardless of the breed or the sport, but just generally speaking, has a dog and they're interested in competing in maybe some form of UKC event? What kind of advice would you give to someone that's thinking about it?
Yeah, of course. What I love about our events and our hunting ops is we are very focused on that community and that family aspect. and such a great way to get started. So if anybody is slightly interested or curious, I would say, find the local club near you. Of course, we've got clubs and events listed on our website. There's usually things happening throughout the year and everything, from within our different sports, and sometimes, again, it's regional or seasonal, but try to find an event. Most of the time they're open to the public. There's spectators are welcome for this stuff. Or get on the forums, connect with friends and family members who maybe have a dog or who do some of these competitions, and just start asking questions and put yourself out there. You'd like to see more, you'd like to learn more, maybe tag along. More often than not, if you sort of show this sincere interest, you're going to get the chance to go out. But I would say, again, don't be afraid. With a lot of these, it doesn't always matter like what type of dog you have. And granted, sometimes, with like Beagle program or Coonhound program, you need to have that breed. Mm-hmm. But UKC, we also have a lot of opportunities available for any breeds, even some of the crossbreds or things like that too. And not just within our hunting ops, but I'll say too, on our all breed sports side of the business as well. That's more of the conformation, agility, dock jumping, weight pull, nose work, things like that. We have a lot of customers that compete on both sides. And, we're all about that total dog philosophy that it looks the part, plays the part, performs, and does it all. So I would say, just kind of get started and you'll work through some of the, intimidation or some of those nerves. And, before you know it, you'll be going to the events and starting to add to the kennel, and you'll be all into it.
Great. This has been super interesting. I thank you very much for sharing some time with us. And I want to end with this. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have? Is there anything else that you want to cover or promote? Certainly, this would be a great place for you to maybe share how people could contact you or learn more about American Field.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sam. A couple different ways to contact. We've got our website, which is journal.americanfield.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. The UKC side of things, the website is ukcdogs.com, and on all the different socials. And we have different channels for our different programs as well. And then, folks are welcome to contact me directly as well. And last thing I would just like to add is with our journal, we're going to have a couple different sort of reader-submitted sections, one for general photos and one for short essays. So again, just really want to provide opportunities for our readers to be in print and sort of get their 15 minutes of fame as well. So
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been fantastic.
Thanks very much, Sam. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Buff in the Rough. And remember to like and subscribe if you want to be notified when we have new content available. And please send comments and suggestions to buffintherough@gmail.com.